Hey everyone, today we're going to dive into one of the most powerful and honestly most jam-packed passages ever written. It's an ancient hymn from the first century that makes some absolutely staggering claims about the very nature of reality. It's short, it's poetic, and believe it or not, it was written to solve a very specific local crisis.
To really get what this ancient hymn is all about, we've got to start with probably the biggest question you can ask. Who's in charge of the universe? I mean, really, who or what is the ultimate center of everything? Nearly 2,000 years ago, a small community was starting to get the answer to that question wrong, and that prompted a response that has been echoing ever since.
So this huge cosmic statement, it didn't just appear out of nowhere. It was a direct, targeted response to a spiritual crisis happening in a small city called Colossae. And to really understand the hymn's incredible answer, we first have to get a handle on the problem it was written to solve. The issue was something you might call spiritual mission creep. There were these new teachings floating around that sounded deep and wise, but they were actually shrinking the role of Jesus Christ. They were making him smaller, less important, and just one piece of a much bigger, more complicated puzzle you had to solve to get to God. And it's really important to know what these rival ideas were. People were being told that, to really connect with God, you couldn't just go through Christ. You needed other go-betweens like angels or other cosmic powers. They were told to follow special rituals. Essentially, Christ was being demoted from being the be-all and end-all to just one stop on a long, complicated spiritual ladder. So the author, Paul, his response isn't to debate these little points one by one. Instead, he just drops this massive vision of Christ that leaves no room for anything else.
So Paul's counterargument starts by laying down the law, basically establishing Christ's absolute supremacy over the entire cosmos. He doesn't just say the other teachers are wrong. He paints a picture of Christ so huge, so all-encompassing, that those other ideas they just collapse in its presence.
And this right here, this is the foundational claim for the whole thing. Now, in ancient Jewish thought, God is invisible. You can't make a picture of him. So to call a person the image of the invisible God, that is an absolutely radical thing to say. It doesn't just mean he's a nice reflection. It means he is the perfect, authorized, visible representation of the God nobody has ever laid eyes on. To see the Son is to see the Father. Everything else the hymn says flows right from this one powerful point. Next, the hymn calls him the firstborn of all creation. Now, this is a term that has caused a ton of confusion over the centuries. But in its original context, firstborn, or prototokos in the Greek, it wasn't really about your birthday. It was a title of supreme rank and authority. And this chart just lays out the difference so clearly. We hear firstborn and we immediately think the first being that was created. But that's a total modern misunderstanding. In the Old Testament, for example, King David is called God's firstborn, even though he wasn't the first king. The nation of Israel is called God's firstborn son, not because it was the first nation on earth. In both cases, the title means preeminent, the heir, the one who has all the rights and authority. So the crucial point here is this. The hymn is declaring Christ as the ruler over creation, not the first creature in it. From there, the hymn just builds this incredible, airtight case. It's like a logical ladder, where each step takes you higher. Okay, so number one, he's the visible image of God. Well, if that's true, then number two, he must be the supreme ruler, the firstborn. And if that's true, well, how could that be? Number three, it's because he's actually the creator of everything. And if he's the creator, then that can only mean one more thing. Number four, he's also the one who is holding it all together right now. It's this escalating vision of his absolute supremacy. And get this, look at the scope of his creation. The hymn specifically names the very things the Colossians were being tempted to get sidetracked by: thrones, dominions, rulers, authorities. Paul's message is just devastatingly clear. He's saying, hey, those spiritual powers you're elevating, those beings you're so worried about, they aren't rivals to Christ, they're his creatures. He made them. This just completely reorders their entire spiritual map. Okay, so having established Christ's total supremacy over the original creation, the hymn then pivots. It's not done. Now it's going to show his supremacy over the new creation, which is the church. And here it is again, that key title, firstborn. But this time, he is the firstborn from the dead. The logic is exactly the same. It's parallel. Just like he's supreme over the first creation, his resurrection makes him the supreme ruler and the starting point of the new creation, the one who brings life out of death. His authority covers literally everything. This verse right here, this is the theological climax of the whole hymn. It's the absolute peak. In a world that was filled with ideas about divine power being scattered among lots of different beings, this hymn makes a truly shocking claim. All the fullness of God, not some of it, not a piece of it, but the complete, total, undiluted presence of God, dwells in Christ. He isn't just a pipeline to God, he is the one place you find the full presence of God. So we have this unbelievably powerful cosmic Christ. But what's the point of all this power? What's he actually doing? Well, the hymn's final section explains that his work is about nothing less than fixing the entire cosmic order. The hymn says that God decided to reconcile all things through the cross. Now, this is another one of those phrases that's really easy to misread. The common assumption is that this means every single being, even rebellious spirits, will eventually be saved and forgiven. But the source material here argues that reconciliation is really more of a legal or judicial term. It's not about universal forgiveness. It's about putting the king back on the throne and reestablishing the proper divine hierarchy. In this view, evil isn't redeemed, it's subdued. Order is restored. So when this hymn talks about the peace that was made by the cross, it's not talking about some kind of warm, fuzzy feeling. No, this is the peace that comes at the end of a war. It's the decisive victory that brings a rebellious universe back into alignment under its one true king. It's the restoration of order, not the decision to just ignore rebellion. And this brings us right back to the central message, the main takeaway. For the Colossians then, and for us now, the hymn is declaring that you don't need to go looking for other powers, other paths, or other spiritual secrets. The universe has only one center, one organizing principle, one person in whom all of reality finds its meaning and coherence, Jesus Christ. And that has to leave us with one last kind of provocative thought to chew on. The hymn's radical claim is that everything, from galaxies and governments, all the way down to the atoms in your body, all of it holds together in him. So the question it leaves us with is this. If that's true, what falls apart when we try to find another center?